Huh.
Good morning, welcome to the March 18th regular session of Board of Supervisors. Ms. Showalter, roll call please.
Grant.
Here.
Schwartz.
Here.
Leyland.
Here.
Kurttenbach.
Here.
Paul.
Here. Please join us for a moment of silence and reflect on today's actions. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1, do we have a motion for the agenda received as proposed or amended? So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 2, public comments. This is a time for anyone who wishes to speak on an item that is not on today's agenda. Seeing none, we'll move to item 3, claims and payments. This is a resolution of the Board of Supervisors approve expenditures that the county auditor be authorized and direct to issue payments against the various settlement of such claims as allowed.
So moved.
Second.
Sweet.
Good morning, Board. Our total bill payment today is $497,181.66. And the portion paid from the 60/40 fund is $2,975.06. Really didn't have any unusual or significant payments today. Everything appears to be in order. Any questions for me?
As a resolution, roll call please.
Schwartz.
Yes.
Leyland.
Yes.
Kurttenbach.
Yes.
Grant.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes. Item 4, receive project updates from department heads and elected officials.
Morning, Board. Ryan Brett, Assistant County Engineer. Crews this week are out doing a lot of maintenance on the gravel roads. We're doing several different activities. Some of that is retrieving shoulder rock. Kind of put a small presentation together on that just to kind of give you some information. As well, we do have our graders out grading the gravel roads, so just trying to get those back in shape here as weather has started to allow. Obviously, we do have some winter weather coming back in tomorrow, so crews will also be getting stuff ready for that, so we can be out plowing, spreading salt sand as needed. So, talk a little about shoulder retrieving. This is a process that we do in the spring routinely on our gravel roads as well as our paved roads. So this does allow us to take a small disc and actually pull in the shoulder rock and kind of regrade the edge of the roadway and just overall maintain some better drainage to the road. So over time, we do get some rock and dirt that kind of builds up and will kind of hold water on that edge. So they'll take a small disc, pull that material in, and then we'll kind of reincorporate that into the roadway. Over time, I mean, with it getting built up, we will pull in some dirt and grass as part of that process. So that does create some kind of short-term mess that does get cleaned up throughout the next month or so. As the grader works that dirt and grass back and forth with some new rock, that will get worked out and improved. Do have a quick video that we took last spring of the process just to kind of show you what that looks like. They'll just drive by, has a small disc on the back of the tractor, and then that pulls in some dirt, rock, and some grass. But overall, it does improve that drainage to help keep the roads in better shape. There is some short-term, encumbrances with that. But if you have any questions, please let us know. We do routinely get some complaints this time of year with pulling that material in. If anyone has questions on it, feel free to have them reach out to our office, and we're happy to talk with them about that or come.
When you say
Go through
short-term
issues
time,
with
like, Ryan, what kind of timeline does that take usually, from start to finish?
It's gonna depend on the roadway. Obviously trying to get out and do some of that work now and then having some snow or rain come in doesn't help. But it's gonna be several weeks. We usually, I think we have 2 of the 9 grader operators out right now doing shoulder retrieving, so we have a couple tractors that are set up for it. And we'll kind of rotate them around different districts. It's not every district that does it every year, it's not every road that gets done every year, so it is kind of on a rotation basis. Some roads can be better, some roads are gonna be worse, it just depends when that was done last. So if there is some stretches that haven't been done in a while, it is gonna take a little more time for that material to work out.
Ryan, being this is the time of the frost, is working out of the ground and tearing up the gravel roads. Is there a plan as far as certain roads, you plan on putting more gravel down or compacting in this process?
Every year we do haul rock. We shoot for about at least 18 to 20 miles for each grader district that will do what we call mile rock, so a complete re-rock of the roadways. We're hauling about 280 to 300 tons a mile when they do that. We do also budget for what we call just spot rock, so they're just doing select locations kind of as needed. So the grader operators that are out right now, they do have some trucks hauling spot rock to them this time of year, just to kind of take care of some of the softer spots or spots that do need it currently. We usually do wait a little later in the year to start doing mile rock once all that frost and everything has worked its way out.
Okay.
What's the cycle of getting a road? How often does a road get?
I don't know if we have a set schedule in which we've done retrieving. Like I said, some roads have been done more often and some not as often, so it's definitely something we've been trying to do more in the last few years to kind of reshape some of those roadways. We are exploring more options on more extensive regrading of some of our gravel roads, and trying to find some ways to do that with our staff to kind of take care of, regrading the entire right of way for some of those sections. So it's definitely something we're going to continue to look into and find ways to improve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other department heads or elected officials? All right, we'll move to item 5, minutes approval for March 10th meeting, Farm Bureau, and March 11th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign, motion carries. Consent agenda, the following items will be acted upon by a single resolution without separate discussion unless someone from the board or public requests a specific item be considered separated.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye. Sorry,
No, you're good.
order, okay. Motion carries.
No,
That's
it's
a resolution.
It's a resolution.
Oh, I thought the motion.
Did we make a motion yet?
Okay, motion on resolution, roll call please.
Leyland,
Yes.
Kurttenbach,
Yes.
Brant,
Yes.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Hawk.
Yes. Item 7, resolution of the agreement between Blackhawk County and the Hudson Hardware Plumbing and Heating, Inc. of Hudson, Iowa, for the ventilation repairs at the LaPorte Road Shop in a total amount of $19,477.39 be approved and direct the chair to sign for same as receive and place on file certificate of insurance as recommended by Catherine Nicholas, County Engineer.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second.
So this is part of some repairs to our shop down in LaPorte. We had budgeted originally about $250,000 for repairs to the building, and kind of over the course of the past year, we've been working with various contractors to really hone in on what some of the issues have been. So this is actually the 3rd contract as part of these repairs. We have 2 out currently, one to do some insulation in the roof, and then the other is to do kind of a spray applied sealer to the roof to kind of help seal that up. The last piece to this is going to be improving the ventilation in the building. So we did get quotes from a few different contractors trying to get different ideas and different opinions on kind of how best to improve that ventilation. A lot of the issues we've been having are just excess moisture building up in there and causing some deterioration to the insulation in the ceiling. So the one we're requesting to go forward with is from Hudson Hardware. They did the ventilation to our Gilbertville shop in Gilbertville 4 or 5 years ago. So as part of that, it will be some new ventilation fans, new exhaust fans. They are incorporating some carbon monoxide sensors in there as well to just automatically kick on fans if there was a buildup of carbon monoxide in the building, so, this is just what we're hoping we can move forward with and get this stuff completed this fiscal year still.
Are there any other questions? Otherwise, we'll do a roll call, please.
Kurttenbach,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Leyland,
Yes.
Paul.
Yes. Item 8A, discussion of possible board action if the best bid received from Pixel Lab for the television and digital advertising campaign at Blackhawk County Job Opportunities with a bid of $40,000 be approved for the chair to sign the contract as recommended by Amanda Besenmeyer, Human Resources.
Alright. Good morning, Amanda Besenmeyer, HR Director. And I'm handing out the bid tabulation as well as a cost breakdown. And before we get into the discussion, I just want to kind of highlight this initiative or this project, which was first brought to the board back in October of 2024. And it was a digital advertising campaign for employment opportunities. And so we solicited bids from various entities throughout the locally, and actually we got a lot of responses. We had 8 responses, some that were out of state, across the nation. So we were able to arrive at 3 finalists, which were KWL, On Media, and Pixel. But the description of this project and why we were soliciting these types of quotes was that to receive proposals from qualified contractors for services for digital media campaign aimed at recruiting qualified applicants for job opportunities at Blackhawk County. We noted that our hiring needs fluctuate from department to department and from year to year based on attrition and staffing needs, and that we were interested in having varied short-term and long-term, or we do have short-term and long-term needs for digital media advertising with regards to employment opportunities. We highlighted on the request for proposal that this would include advertising and highlighting Blackhawk County as an employer that would reach audiences throughout the northeast region of Iowa. The board authorized back when I released the RFP that this would be a 4-month campaign not to exceed $40,000. We also discussed in that cost breakdown that the board would pay for $20,000 or half of that, and then the remaining amount will be spread across the departments that have the most, recruitment retention needs, which is positions like assistant county attorney. Within the sheriff, it would be civilian detention officer, deputy sheriff. Within dispatch, civilian dispatcher. Public health nurse, and for our roads department, roads equipment operator or an engineering technician. That would be another example of that. So that brings us here to today. Again, we had the 8 bids, and we did use a scoring criteria that to evaluate each of those, and then came across the 3 finalists and had them come in and speak with representatives from public health, dispatch, HR, marketing, and our roads department. And then we were able to come to a decision and are recommending to move forward with Pixel Labs for this RFP. One of the key factors that we discussed was the longevity of this initiative. When I initially presented it as a 4-month campaign, but the departments are interested in continuing this, but not with it being, paid for primarily from the board. And so that was a key factor in the follow-up question that we had for each of the finalists, that if we were happy with this project, the departments felt like it was working well, and we were decided to continue or extend it, what would the cost structure look like? And Pixel Lab came back with the most attractive, cost-efficient proposal. Their proposal is primarily, I'll just kind of read through their summary. It says that they combine precision, relevance, and a people-centered approach to deliver an impactful recruitment initiative, focusing on targeted, role-specific messaging across digital channels to create engaging content that resonates with diverse communities within the county. Rather than relying on broad generic ads, our emphasis is on meaningful engagement. So, I can talk through kind of the finalists. I do have Zach and Aaron here from Pixel to help answer any specific questions. Gabby is also here. I'm not a marketing expert, but I do understand our recruiting needs and how that can vary from job classification department and in different times of the year. So, but yeah, this one is primarily of the finalists, we have KWL, which targeted mostly on the television commercial broadcast. We had On Media, which was more your digital advertising, kind of behind the scenes. I'm not good at explaining this, but it's basically layering all of that to kind of pinpoint and target that ideal profile or candidate of an employee, potential employee interested in these career fields. And then with Pixel Labs, it was emphasizing the social media presence and having that meaningful engagement and one that was very cost effective to do across various platforms, which can be complex when you talk about Facebook versus Instagram versus YouTube and all the different areas that you can post content. So
And did you mention them when you were gonna initially start this? Would it be started immediately or what were your?
So yeah, at this point, we're looking at starting within the next month. I believe we're available to do that. All the finalists we kind of adjusted the timeline a bit. Originally thinking this would be awarded back in December, which is not an ideal time to really recruit or put together content. It's winter, so if you're shooting outdoor things or even in the courthouse, it's a little bit better time to do that now in the spring and to get this where we start to see our recruitment ramp up. But yeah, we'd be looking at starting within the next 30 days. So.
In addition to social media platforms, does this include like Google ads or web browser based ads? No?
You want to come on up and let you all speak to the technical piece?
Hi everyone, I'm Aaron Jarnigan with Pixel Labs. I'm the brand strategist. So your question was about Google Ads specifically. So kind of to capture our approach, we're not tied to any specific platforms that we use. Our goal is when we're looking at advertising, what makes the most sense, and that comes from how we can get in front of people, but also cost effectiveness. So generally, depending on the budget and the client we're working with, Google Ads is not one that we recommend to start. We look at social media, we do look at some digital advertising, because for us it's all about what does it cost to get somebody that would be interested in your content, interested in your position, but ultimately then go to like a website or a landing page that has information about your position. So it all goes back to the different levers that we can pull. We want them to be the most cost effective and also just make the most sense. So generally not, but it depends.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is there any way to evaluate success from like other agencies who've used this as a mechanism to get recruitment? Would anybody know?
I'm sure there could be a way. I know of the finalists, they do have others that they included that said I think Dubuque County was one. For example, like lifeguards right now, like cities really have to ramp up recruitment for like lifeguards. I don't know if you guys have examples from other small businesses, but but we certainly could I could reach out and ask about that success with that. But I think it's fairly common that we see cities and counties and school districts, public entities moving towards an approach of marketing their roles through social media, through digital advertising, through television advertising. So, but does that answer your? I guess
Yeah,
I don't have that right off the.
Yeah, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, you're fine.
Just seeing it, hearing this stuff spawns questions in my mind. So I'm gonna assume, well, I won't assume, which departments are in the most dire need and what do we have going down the road the next several years as far as expected attrition?
So right now, the ones that continues to be are law enforcement, emergency response, so dispatch and our jail. We also, with the attorneys, that is a major kind of crisis right now in that field because there's a massive shortage of attorneys. Public health nurse is still an area, and I would say public health has kind of had a little bit more stability experienced. Probably the most stability with recruitment these last 4 to 6 months, 4 months. Prior to that, with the pandemic, they were one of those that had a lot of retention or increased retention. And then for Kathy's group in the roads department, we've seen the applicant pool change a lot for roads equipment operators. What used to be, I would say we were a very competitive employer because we have strong benefits. You have that you're staying home every night, you're not out on the road. So we have reasonable hours, holidays, things like that. But again, with COVID, I would say that construction companies or private companies that employ roles that need a CDL were paying pretty well, starting to reevaluate their pay structures, their benefit structures, and their flexibility. And we saw that applicant pool kind of, I guess, decrease, and even the level of qualified applicants was not as great. We were having to go out to making several offers, from everything to having poor driving records to positive drug screens to even just turning down the job because they got a better offer with their current employer. They said, well, I can't afford to lose you, so I'll pay you more. So those are the ones that tend to still be on our radar for difficult ones, where we don't have as much difficulty, but I still think it would be important that we want to recruit talented and qualified applicants is, in those customer service roles. So such as your treasurer's office, your recorder's office, elections, any of those frontline staff, those are important ones to kind of, I guess, elevate that we are an employer, that we're one of the, medium-sized ones in this area, and that individuals looking either to get into public sector or to continue their public sector experience, maybe from another city or county, can do so here. But we don't necessarily have, like I said, those clerical administrative roles we can fill pretty easily now, so. But, trying to think, conservation on occasion, it can be tough to keep rangers, because they can go, they're another one that in Des Moines area, we've lost a couple to the Des Moines area, to Story County, for just other opportunities. So it tends to be an area where people can come here, get trained, get your certification, and then go elsewhere. But I think our conservation department does a nice job of highlighting all the parks that we have and the unique, areas that we manage, but those can be tough to retain as well.
Is Gabby still here?
Yeah.
I'm assuming this is a you question, maybe it's a question, but we're able to see on the back side of the website, some historical data of who's going in and looking at jobs, or the number of people that are going in and looking at job
Analytics
postings.
pages, yes.
Yeah. So, to your question, Justin, I think we could also look at the conclusion of this campaign. It's not exactly apples and apples because the opportunities are different, but just to be able to see what our organic traffic is on those page hits versus
In comparison.
post the campaign.
Right.
And see if we've had some measurable traffic.
Okay.
Yeah, and the difference really, that, compared to me making a post on social media that sits on social media is completely different than what they're doing, where they're specifically making sure that that ad goes in front of the person that might be most interested in seeing it. And so there's a lot more on the background that they know, kind of technical, over than what I do, so.
And this is.
And then that drives traffic, like you said, to our website.
Maybe a question for Amanda, maybe for, are we looking at more video content, more still image?
A combination of both.
Okay, so there will
Yep.
be there will be some video shooting and that
Yep.
sort of thing.
Yep.
Potentially used as B-roll for other marketing, and we would own that content, correct?
Yes. And that's been something, Pixel was really helpful in our video showcase project, where very willing to share videos that they had taken both for like public health, but also just in the community, which really made our video showcase very robust. So there's not any concern in them not sharing the video later.
As far as tracking, people are doing the applications, not so much just that we have success in the employees hiring as well too. Is there a way that we're able to track when people apply to say how they got word of the?
Sure.
I just wondered if that's
Yeah.
something we considered, because it sure be.
No, our applicant tracking does have analytics on that end. We're about a year into using the new NeoGov system, so we've got a good base to start with. So we'll that'll be our point of reference. We started that in February of 2024. And I would probably give it, probably looking more into the summer months of last year to be our baseline. But we certainly can, there are questions in those applications that ask, they're not required, but say, where did you hear about this position? A lot of that tends to happen too in the interviews too. We're having hiring managers talk about that more, or employees offer up. For example, our sheriff's office has tried different things, such as having bumper stickers or having the signs outside, and has done digital advertising, radio advertising, so they are trying to understand where those efforts are going. And we do get some of that feedback in the interview as well as through the application. So we're seeing I would say, a lot of the applicants say they see it on Indeed, but that isn't always maybe accurate. That might just be, well, they saw it here, but there's a lot of ways that an ad can route you to your final destination. Sometimes it is job alerts or word of mouth, but we're hoping with the work that the marketing coordinator position that Gabby's done, that we can kind of build this momentum with Pixel supporting some really great content and something that can be kind of specialized in those areas instead of just generic and broad. So.
And this bid incorporates both the cost of production, but also the actual cost of advertisements.
Yes. And then moving forward, when we talked about the longevity of this, again, the departments, you can see in that cost breakdown, which is this spreadsheet. So again, with the board paying for 20,000 of it, that makes this pretty achievable for the other departments to use from their current budget this fiscal year to afford to do this kind of campaign, but they recognize that it'll be kind of their responsibility to manage that going, beyond this campaign. And something that I'm hopeful we can come, as part of our budgets that we start to incorporate this type of advertising and to draw in, those audiences as opposed, sometimes job boards, we've spent a lot of money over the years at different things in newspapers and job boards, and I don't know that's always been as effective or as the audience has evolved. They're spending a lot of time on here, and I think it's a good plan to start and to see where it can lead us. So it gives us that flexibility to, right now maybe Rhodes doesn't have an opening today, but they'll have one in a few months where that would make sense. With the attrition question, I would say that I don't know that we'll have as many retirements this year as we did last year, but we do have employees from public health, roads, clerical roles that do have plans to retire this year, so we will be seeing those vacancies come up.
I think this would run adjacently to this, but I just had the thought, we've got all sorts of, 100+ school district employees being laid off over the next year or so. That maybe there's opportunity for some direct outreach, working with the school districts to inform those employees that might be looking for a way to continue government service.
Yep, that IPERS, their retirement, to continue that's a great, so.
Alright, coming at you with a few more.
Yes.
The department heads who are going to be in most critical need of this, are they gonna be able to have an input if they so choose, as far as strategy or anything?
That would be the plan, that yes, we would have, an opportunity where they would meet with each, to kind of develop that content. You could certainly speak to some of that if you'd like, but yeah, it's not, I'm not deciding it for them.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Zach Epperman, I'm the owner of Pixel Labs, and to answer your question, yes, the idea of the whole campaign was to keep it unique to each department, and so we will go through the process of meeting with each department head to make sure that we learn who the people are that we're trying to reach, what their demographic looks like, their interests, stuff like that, and then that way we can create unique content for each department specifically.
Okay. Thank you, Zach. Have you guys have done previous government? I got one more after this too, and then I'll be done, I should be done.
Okay.
You guys have done previous government, gigs like this too?
Yeah, so over the last couple of years, we've actually worked with the Whatcom County Public Health Department on creating a full marketing campaign that spanned a lot of different demographics, languages, and a lot of different messaging that went on many different platforms.
Okay. Would Caitlin be able to, I assume, she'd be able to offer some insight as far as how that went? For the,
Actually,
Yeah,
I can.
Yeah.
That was kind of part of my previous role when I was over in public health.
Okay.
And the reason we went with Pixel at that time is because they understood that we were promoting public health and the importance of public health in the community, and we were trying to reach in 6 different languages as well as English. And so Zach and the team really worked well with us to make sure that the videos reflected the community that we were serving, and also that we got it in the languages, and we did flyers in the languages, and then got them distributed in the areas that the people frequented the most, and so it was a really great working experience.
Okay. So besides the health department, has there been any other?
Thanks.
Yeah, we worked with the city of Rhinebeck on creating some different campaign materials just to do talent attraction and people attraction in general, so.
Okay. All right, that's all I have, thank you.
I know this, I've worked loosely with them as well, right? Appreciate the fact that they're community-minded. Not all marketing entities have that as sort of a foundational part of their philosophy, so, and, you know, I think Gabby hit on it when we did the campaign with the 6 videos that we just released, right? Being able to get content, didn't have to pay money for B-roll video or any of that sort of thing. I think it just sort of speaks to strong partnership and community partnership, so.
And there will be opportunities to have some generic content just for us as an employer, so it's not just those job classifications, but you know, we will have openings. For example, our facilities department has 2 vacancies right now, and having this kind of content, even just a Blackhawk County join our team types of messaging, that will be part of this as well. So it won't just be only those, I mean, other departments will benefit from this as well. And then, like I said, if we want to kind of deploy some of those content, I would think from our office we'd be able to support that. I'd look to kind of, hopefully, depending on how this all goes, bring forward some kind of budget to just have continuous advertising, even up from a general stance from Blackhawk County. And then those departments that have that need can do that as needed, so. Any questions on the cost sharing? So that was a little unique, that with this proposal. And that's kind of a, right now, one-time thing with the board paying. That we did look at even having each department share a piece of that, but with some of the smaller departments that haven't had a lot of turnover, it just kind of felt like, well, let's focus on those that have the retention needs, or the recruitment needs because of the retention concerns. And but any questions on the cost proposal and the split, the way that was developed?
So that'd be re-examined if there were other departments that wanted, like, have needs that we feel like.
I think for right now, for this one, yeah, so if, let's say, a department, you know, in areas like, some point in the future, we have established that kind of, I guess, criteria and content and cost, to structure to be able to have, like, let's say conservation wants to do this, they're not on this list right now, but they might be a great example. Then we can have kind of a starting point for them as well.
For them.
And I don't think it would be difficult to incorporate another department in the future, so. But you know, right now, it's nice because the board's paying for, again, kind of half of that, making up all the other departments, so.
Amanda,
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
No, I'm done, no, just say thank you.
perhaps off topic. Do we currently have like an employee referral bonus type of thing?
No, we don't.
Could we, maybe just something to talk about, perhaps in lieu of money, I trust that we have good people that know good people.
Sure.
And perhaps in lieu of money, there's like days off, like extra days, paid days off, like almost like a free personal day or something like that, or a couple.
Something like that, yeah. I mean, we could
Yeah.
explore that. I could certainly, I think any kind of incentives, I think that's, outside of even just the financial ones. We've talked about even in safety, having where, certain, you know, safety incentives where people earn a day off. I know there's some communities that do that for safety. I don't know about employee, like, referrals.
Right.
But I could certainly explore that, and I think, even, yeah, I'm open to looking at some incentive.
It's called bounty
Ideas.
awards. Bounty awards.
Oh.
Bounty award?
And man, I appreciate this. My previous role was recruiting, so
Mm-hmm.
this being set up as an ongoing or looking into the future for the different departments, I wholeheartedly agree with. I would like to have some kind of review, maybe 6 months.
Yep.
So we know what kind of success we're having. But I like your idea too, Jess, and we need to look at that as well, because we found in my previous world that word of mouth of folks that we've been recruiting was the best, the most return, for the dollars, so,
And we've seen, I know, I think Nate shared with me one of his applicants saw like one of the employee spotlights that a new hire shared. And I think that this Pixel's approach pairs really well with what Gabby's been putting together, and everything from highlighted new hire orientation, and you just see a lot more engagement that people are proud to share that they're generally, they share that on their page. And so that word of mouth is a very very valid way to look at recruitment as well. And looking outside, where there are times where we need to kind of attract or look at candidates outside of even just here locally within the workforce or the contacts I have, I think this can help supplement that as well, definitely, to kind of expand that reach a bit, so.
where are we at right now with openings? Are we over 20 openings?
I don't think we have, I'd have to go back and look to find out for sure. I don't have that right off the top of my head, but if I pulled up the job postings right now, we have, deputy sheriff, detention officer, might have a master control. No, there you go.
They're closed, I don't, I've got 9 openings between deputy and detention officers, so I'm going to guess the others probably got 20.
Yeah, and then Rory's got the 2, and public health has 1 right now for sure. And then there's been some movement with bids. I think actually one of the sheriffs did into an attorney role, a clerical. I don't know if you guys are.
She's
Yep. So I don't know, 20, but probably 15 to, so. Yep, so it doesn't, I've, never been at a place where, or I've never been at a point since being in HR and even with the county where we've been, fully staffed, and I don't think that's probably something that's gonna happen likely even, but I think this can enhance our options and alternatives in recruitment, and can kind of be in sync with what we've already laid out there with Gabby's work and with the rebrand and everything, so I think we've got a good opportunity here, and appreciate all the questions. I knew going into this, because it was a different board when, back in October when this project was set out, at least we have 2 new board members, so I appreciate the questions and it's good dialogue. Anything else that I can help with this?
I got one from Michelle. Looking at the turnover factor for budgeting, assuming we cut those 20 vacancies, how does that affect us for budgeting purposes then?
That, as you probably all realize, we are budgeting for $1 million a year of turnover, which is at least 10 positions probably for a full 12 months. So as our vacancies go down, that's gonna tighten the budget. We're gonna, like, right now, we would spend over, we'd be dipping into reserves to do that. Obviously, with listening to Nate, we're not at risk of doing that in 2026, but if this works, it would likely reduce that. And I do think most departments are trying to use that savings to pay for this, so that's another whole factor that affects the turnover pool.
Alright, thank you.
When we look at, obviously with the law enforcement team, we had a large turnover there through attrition with the retirements, and just looking ahead, you can kind of see, engage, there are some departments that likely will be experiencing that as well in the next, from 1 to 3 years. We kind of had it with the treasurer's office maybe 3 years ago with former treasurer Rita retiring and several of her long-term staff leaving, so it is about, it won't be as large as probably the sheriff's office, that was kind of unique, but whether it's conservation, roads, some of the other departments, we'll start to see that kind of continue. And at some point, it does kind of flatten with regards to attrition and retirements, but.
I was just gonna throw into, obviously with sheriff's office, we have minimum staffing, so a lot of our shortage gets eaten back up in overtime. Obviously with a lot of the departments in the courthouse, if they're short, that just means it's that much longer till the work gets done. Because if you go through our budget and add overtime back in, if you just look at my line item for wages, I'm well under, but then you threw on the overtime, and it actually brings me pretty close back to being flush with where I should be. So on our end, the body's down, equates to some saving, but with the overtime thrown in, paying time and a half to cover what should have been straight time, we don't really come up that far ahead on it.
I'll offer a motion to approve. Just to be clear, it's listed on the agenda as television digital advertising. Should I make a motion just digital, or is there a possibility that television might be included if that's decided it's needed?
I just named it that because that's what the RFP, but you know, the RFP says digital advertising, so we can just call it digital advertising, which encompasses television.
I'll offer a motion to approve the bid for $40,000 for digital advertising. That's been received from Pixel Labs of Cedar Falls.
Second.
Alright, we've got a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Grant,
No.
Leland,
Yes.
Kurttenbach,
Yes.
Yes.
We'll have a contract prepared for the chair to sign, and if you've got any other questions, we'll take this into account, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 8B, resolution that the request for purchase of capital equipment submitted by Rory Given, facilities director, be approved and direct the chair to sign for same to approve the purchase of one 3/4 ton Ram 2500 tradesman pickup truck for Stu Henson, Dodge City, Ankeny, Iowa, for the facilities department from the lowest responsible quote with the amount of $41,922.
So moved.
Second.
For a motion and a second, Rory?
Good morning, Board. Rory Giving, Facilities Director. We did utilize the state bidding process, and we received 3 bids. Stu Hansen, $41,922, and then the next, the highest bid was from Dewey Ford, Carl Chevrolet, which was $45,752.60. So our recommendation is to go with Stu Hansen for the 2025 Ram 2500 in the amount of $41,922.
Were we
This
close
was
to
pretty-
budget?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was gonna say, were we close to budget?
I believe we budgeted $50,000 for that.
I just wanted to verify, is this Ankeny or Urbandale? 'Cause it's, the bid sheet says Urbandale and the agenda says Ankeny.
Yeah.
Stu Hansen, I believe, is Urbandale.
Well, the other two look like they're Ankeny, so maybe we
Yeah.
just kind of.
Yeah.
Very good. Do we have a motion?
no, motion.
Do a roll call.
Kurttenbach,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Leland,
Yes.
Yes. Item 8C, resolution that the request for purchase of capital equipment submitted by Rory Giving, facilities director be approved and direct the chair to sign for same to approve the purchase and installation of 2 B&C SP 110 commercial washers and 2 B&C DE 120 commercial dryers for use in the jail facility with the lowest responsible quote from E. Weinberg Supply and Equipment, Minneapolis, with the amount of $88,400.
So moved.
Second.
Yes, so we did receive 3 bids for this. We went through all 3 bids. We compared with our existing specs and the requested specs. This recommendation is actually not the lowest bid, but it is the bid that met our specifications. Just as an example, some of those specifications were stainless steel drum. Whereas the low bid was not a stainless steel drum, so that was something that got our attention. The second bid, or the bid that we're making a recommendation on, also had a larger volume capacity, which that worked in their favor. So, and there's about a half a dozen different items on there that didn't quite meet the specs that we had sent out. So that is why we are actually seeking for the middle bid, which is Weinberg Supply and Equipment out of Minneapolis in the amount of $88,400. We did budget $80,000 for this, so we are just a bit over. And that was out of jail commissary.
There's plenty of balance in there to absorb that other $8,000 too.
Don't get to say that.
Yeah. Don't say that too loud, Nate.
Yeah, thanks.
Uh,
Keep up the good
Don't
work.
say that too loud.
Yeah, keep up the good work.
I mean, there's a little balance.
Yeah, there we go.
Either way, it's good to have something.
This is we've got a motion and a second, roll call please.
Excuse me, yes.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Lehman,
Yes.
Kirkendall,
Yes.
Paul.
Yes. Next up, work session, discussion, possible action on opioid settlement funds. I'm gonna request a quick little recess before we start that.
Request granted.
Yeah.
Request, I guess we
I
could
mean,
deny.
you can deny it if you want to.
Yeah, that's what I thought, you just nicely said request.
No.
Who made the motion on that last one?
No. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I seconded.
Thank you.
Watch the
Voices are starting to sound the same when my head's down.
Yeah.
We'll watch the playback and find out.
I was
Yeah.
going to if you guys didn't know.
All you have to do is pick one, nobody usually. I'm sorry,
No.
are we having a work session?
The opioid one.
No, she pulled that back off.
Okay, I said.
Caitlin maybe will talk to you, I don't know.
Agenda, okay.
You,
thought
I do, I think
and
Laura
thought
maybe
Dave
just did
said
ours.
opioid, so I wanted to mention
Oh, did he?
that.
Oh, I
I
didn't.
thought he did, but maybe I didn't hear it.
That's all right, maybe he's ready to say that, maybe that's why you took the break, because I don't think we've been too long.
I did request to pull that off, so if we could table it to next week, that would be perfect.
Yeah. No, we were
Thank
planning to, I didn't know if he noticed it or not, thank you, Caitlin.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry?
Do we need to amend the agenda?
Not really, I mean, she pulled it off, I was gonna say, we just put it on and said we just wait it till next week. Cause it was just discussion possible action. We can comment.
Thank you all so much for agreeing to that.
Thank you for requesting it, yeah.
All right.
Did you comment that you were gonna go into the opioid work session?
Yes.
Okay, all right, I hadn't caught
Oh,
that,
yeah.
I just wasn't sure, so I'm sorry. Caitlin, maybe you wanna comment now that we're back in session?
Yeah, I would request from the board that we table this until next week. And I will take ownership, it was my error. I sent the agenda request and I sent it to our Lori rather than the board's Lori. And so it didn't get on the agenda, so then I notified all the people that were gonna come and discuss that we weren't gonna do it. And then Lori very kindly amended the agenda to get it back on, and I had already notified all the people not to come. So, so that's why I'm requesting to table it until next week.
Yep, that's fine. Look forward to it. Thanks, Caitlin.
Thank you.
All right, item 9B, discussion possible action for all aspects of the FY26 county budget. Do you have any items in particular?
Topics, I'm just putting it on,
Placeholder.
so if you have
Because I
topics
think
you wanna
it's
bring up, you
something-
can.
Yep.
And I had asked Michelle, I said, I was just kind of curious, as we're starting to see and hear from some of the groups, you know, with what their tax rates are being and seeing some on that. I said, we had gone through, you know, and I thought the hypothetical provided, you know, we were all quite, it seemed like when we reviewed our list, that everybody was felt satisfactory with approving everything and going forward, and I said, I know as Rich mentioned, he's got someone to call today that is talking about high taxes. And so my question to Michelle had been, well, a couple of them, a little bit, if, I don't know that we know yet how we fare with everyone else as far as tax rates, but I said, I know the schools, Waterloo Schools was at 28%. Ours is at 4%, and I didn't know about Waterloo and some of the others, and I don't know if you could speak to that at all. Just kind of looking, I guess, out for the taxpayers and what we're gonna be looking ahead to, hearing from those taxpayers, what those rates are gonna be.
So, actually during the meeting, I kind of roughed out taking that published notice that people are getting in the mail and using the proposed rates for each of the three entities if all three of these entities adopt the rates that are on the proposed, an increase to a residential property, and I just use the standard 100,000, it would be an increase of 13.65%. If people are not able to bring those down. And that's about as far as I've gotten with that calculation, but
That's all right.
I can send out more. They are kind of substantial increases.
Can we maybe specify what our percentage of that increase would come out to? I know that's not looking for on the spot, but
Well, it's
our,
the 4.2% is what I showed you for a residential.
is our increase, yes.
Yes.
But the percentage of the increase overall, right?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm not expecting
No, not on the spot.
math
No,
on the
it's
spot,
just-
but as we move forward with the conversation, I think it's helpful for us to be able to say, yes, we're at whatever we settle in on, and that equates to Y.
Yeah, and that's typically why, I mean, as far as the item, I said I appreciated the fact too that she put down there, discussion of possible board action. I think we've always included that up until the time when we finally approve it, so if there's anything that staff wants to mention or something that we look at a possibility of doing it, like I said, I thought we were all quite pleased probably where we ended up, but I said I know we'll hear from a lot of taxpayers as that rate is gonna be high, and understanding our rate and our portion of it's gonna be critical, I think, for people. And it's gonna be, it may, like I said, when you talk about that, what a dollar amount would be, and everybody always kind of looks at that when you use the residential urban kind of as a benchmark. Like I say, for us, it was just the $13 and seemed kind of a doable,
Yeah.
but
$13
on top of every.
And that, and this is where it all gets a little tricky. That was using a base value of 120,500 due to the revaluations last year. So I backed it down just to a flat 100,000 for this calculation, and that increase per 100,000 of residential value is $263 a year total for all. That's just those three largest entities. You know, that doesn't even address what's going on with Hawkeye Community College, the assessor, you know, those other smaller agencies that they don't include in this notice.
And that doesn't take into account then the Cedar Falls School District.
I just ran an example for Waterloo
Yeah.
because that was the number I
Yep.
had. I would be happy to
I think
run
eventually,
others
yeah.
if people
Yeah.
can, you know, Tim or somebody can give me the information, because I just don't happen to have it.
Do we have an idea when we do have that typically, just because it is gonna be critical, because there's more and more articles about it and more increases, just to
It
give us
just
information
depends.
as we talk with others.
I mean, they all have this notice, so I just need to get that information from Tim Jamison. In terms of when their final budget hearings are, it just depends when they're scheduled, and I just haven't, it's hard to follow now. It's hard to see it in the paper. I only know these hearings, for example, the school's first hearing is scheduled for March 24. And I know they need to publish again, and they got that whole waiting period similar to us, so it's probably gonna be 2, maybe 3 weeks before they have their final hearing. And same with ours, our final hearing isn't really till April 21st. And City Waterloo, this hearing is not until April 7th, a week after ours. So I don't know when they're planning to have their final hearing, but it's likely after April 22nd, I'm guessing. But that's a guess. So, and as I said, I don't know the Cedar Falls schedule or the other.
But we do have their max, cause that was required.
We have the max,
Yep.
I can get that,
Yep.
yep, I can get that.
I think they said 8, it was just a little less than 8 for their max, but they expected it to be lower, and then we saw them change their plans for the Unidome and some of those things too, so.
What's always, I think Cedar Falls typically puts that in the paper as how much their total tax collections are going up, so it isn't necessarily how it impacts any individual taxpayer. So I would wanna get the information that's on here for them, and then I can run some real numbers for you.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be helpful.
We're seeing, you know, the largest driver of property and taxes for this community at least is the schools right now. And that's, as the state legislature talks about property tax reform, they've gotta realize they can't keep underfunding education in the state, and they've been only funding it at a level that does not keep up with inflation, that's why we're in this situation. And so if they are really serious about property tax reform, they'll get serious about funding education.
The frustrating part is Sunday, I had to explain to a person about our flyers we got in the mail. And bring up the whole thing that Tim showed us last week, what the real reality is. And people don't understand that, and it's, when I tried sharing it with them, it was like you see a light bulb going on, why are they making it look like this? And I was like, all I can tell you is this is what we're told we have required to be selling it, or send out to you, so more information is needed so people understand it.
I will add, we've had way fewer calls in our office than we did last year, so.
Last year was the
That was the first year.
Last year was the first year, so they probably just, why am I getting this?
I didn't bother opening mine. I saw it wasn't what you need. And the other question I'd asked Michelle was about the bonding. I think you've all heard me say several times that this was so new to us, doing the 7 hearings and looking at projects differently. And she was putting together some information for us later, I think, for why the need for 7. I just mentioned it'd be helpful to me to see what's in each of those hearings and why, I think for future use, if nothing else too, because it was so different. But I think one of the questions I had too was, we know there's a cost for bonding. We know that we're planning to do those hearings or sell those bonds fairly soon. It sounded like maybe in April, possibly. You were working on a schedule.
The sale will probably be later, but we need to start the process in April so that we can set the amount of the bonds and get through that whole publication process. And I'd like to have it closed in June, which means you need to have a sale end of May-ish. So we really are getting on a timeline to get it done by the end of June.
You know, because April just seems like right around the corner, and that's why I was kind of asking.
It is, yeah.
Some of my questions to her recently, though, were the fact that we would be doing the bonds or selling the bonds for the projects that we have listed and approved. And what if we weren't to do a project or something happened in a year or whatever to keep us from moving forward on it or deciding not to do it? How bound we are, I guess, by those requirements, then to what do we do if we've done that, and so if, I don't know if you're prepared to answer that today, but I was gonna say, it was just some of those questions. And I used it as an example, like our $800,000 that we had budgeted for the board office.
Yep.
I said, let's say something happens and we couldn't do that, or we didn't get it done in the time, how committed are we, or what are the requirements, I guess, for us, or do we have flexibility in that, so those kinds of things.
So we can abandon, if you will, any project that's in the hearings. And I wanted to go review this with our bond counsel, but she was out of town yesterday. So I will provide more technical information about that later. But you can always reduce it. I wanna verify the consequences of doing that. Because there are some quirks in the law about whether you can bring it back like the following year if you decide to do it. You may not be able to. So before we exclude any, I would like to have the right answer about what the consequences are of doing that. If you went ahead and sold the bonds the way they are, the way the hearings are, and then you decided not to, we'd have that money. We could have another hearing it's called a reallocation hearing. I have done those before, to substitute a different project for one that's in there. At this point, because the best information I had is what departments requested, right? So I developed the 5-year plan based on what has been turned in. And my goal was to try to get that debt service levy even, so that we don't have the increases like part of it is from debt service this year. So because we are nearing payoff of some existing bonds, I've accelerated the repayment over the next few years so that it can remain level and you can do the road building as well. But by the time you're ready to do that, if we do this now, we should be able to remain relatively flat at that point. So anything that we take out of this year, I'll just need to rework the schedule. You may end up having to have increases in future years and not be able to, maintain it level. That
Are we-
would be the-
Are we required, if we bond for a project and just workflow timelines, we're not able to start it until July of what would that be, 26? Would we, is there an issue there, or are we required to start a project X amount of months after we bond for it, or?
We're not, there are all kinds of IRS regulations about spending that money down because there are rules in the IRS law, because we get an advantage, right? We get tax exempt interest, which should be.
Yeah, it's all good. I'm back
selling at
now
a
though.
lower rate.
You guys been staying busy? Yeah, it seems like it's doing.
So, because we have that lower interest rate, the government, US government, does not want us to just go out and sell bonds and make money on that difference, right? They don't want us to be able to invest it and make more than what we're paying. So there can be, if you don't spend your money down quickly enough, there are penalties, and you have to return a portion of that interest that you earned to the IRS. That was the payment that we talked about that we had to make in January on one of the issues. I generally try really hard to avoid that, but it's a little more difficult here, that the bond that had the problem was only sold for one purpose. So because that project is having some delays for a lot of reasons, there was really nothing I could do, didn't have any other similar type projects that I could substitute, to pay down the bonds. So you don't wanna let it go too long. If we sell the bonds, we need our departments to be committed to doing those projects, but.
But the penalty is just a portion of the interest, it's not.
Right.
Okay, so in the interest of us maybe level setting our debt service levy, there still seems to be some value in issuing the bond, even if there is a slight risk of having to pay a portion of the interest back.
Yes, that would be one way to look at it, yep.
And I know one of the other questions I was trying to think of when we were talking about this is that the 5-year plan, we've all had departments, some had excellent 5-year plans, some hadn't been doing it as long, but there was a lot of information in those 5-year plans that we have now that you were kind of building what we do for the bonding, right? I was gonna say, and that was something different that we hadn't been doing really. So how critical is it, I guess, that we maintain what we have in there? How much flexibility do we have in our plans still going forward? Because you need some fluid projects.
That's a fair question. Again, it all relates to the priority of maintaining the debt service levy. It all depends how much of a priority that is for you. Because we can, obviously we're gonna go through this process every year. People are gonna turn in different projects, different amounts. Could be increases, could be decreases, I don't know. And we'll have to evaluate each of those. So what I really am doing now is trying to set, I think we need to issue approximately this amount. And you'll notice, in fact, maybe give me 1 second. I need to get something on my screen, and then we'll look at the schedule. And so I can just kind of show you. I tried to set what I'm gonna call some overall goal, that if we issued bonds every 2 years, this is how much you could issue, and not really, hopefully. Now, there's all kinds of assumptions in there. Interest rates, which is a huge one, that it could change it. But I've tried to, thank you. So what I've tried to do is have what I'm gonna call our regular CIP issues happen every 2 years. So I'm starting out, and this says FY '26, because that'd be the first year we'd make a repayment out of the debt service levy, but I'd actually want to issue it at the end of, in this fiscal year, so that I can levy it for next year, where we run into some deadlines there. So I'm showing that you could do 5 million this year, 5 million again, this says 27, but it's kind of an every other year thing, except, and then in 29, I did use a lower amount only because people really turned in less that year. And what I don't know is if it's just that it's so far out, and I suspect that will increase in a year or two, so we'll probably, and again, that will depend on you, because you obviously don't have to prove any of them. But then I did try to slot in the road building, that's why this is not truly working every other year, is because I did the roads separately in an off year. So, and that's why I'm not showing an issue in 2030, but then I would assume we would have one.
Since we're talking the capital stuff, I was gonna jump in with the curve, something that we've talked about, really, I think for about 3 years now, is the intake and evidence building. And I don't think I had that in my 5 years, I really didn't know where we stood on that, other than we've talked numerous times that it needs done. I know Supervisor Trelka, it was for, then against, and then originally at the end was gonna have it done before I left, and that didn't happen. Then I've been talking with Waterloo about a joint venture on their building. Chief Duncan called me this morning, and just last night at the city council meeting, they approved an architect for almost $250,000 to go ahead and design their building. And we're hoping to go in with them on that, so I'm gonna put in an agenda request for next week to come to you, because obviously they're gonna want to know if we're gonna be in on it with them, which we really need to be, and how much we'll be in for, so.
Sounds like from the message from the sound of it from last night's meeting, 1.5.
That's what they're hoping for from us, because they're looking at about a $3 million building, and they're hoping for about 1.5 from us, which, and again, that's the number that Dan originally quoted a few months ago, so that's where that came from. So, and again, that's about what we had asked for on our original building that was planned. We had $1.5 million plus another $250,000 with the gaming grant. So it's that same building. It's with Waterloo doing it, obviously it's going to be much larger. They have offices in it, they'll have people staffed there. So it's going to be a bigger and better building that we would get into for roughly the same price we'd originally hoped to, so we're kind of looking at. But again, I know that's an agenda item for next week, but since we were talking all this, I wanted.
It's gonna be like a presentation to us since we don't know anything about it.
Well, right now we don't have plans or anything, and I know Chief Duncan's gonna be here with me next week, and we'll both be here to discuss it. Again, they just approved the architecture, or the architect to be hired, so it's gonna go forward from there, but I think you've seen the plans and stuff that we had from ours originally. They're gonna build off of those, so it's gonna incorporate all those things, but then they actually staff people there, so there'll be offices and a little bit more with that stuff going on. Obviously, a lot more storage space because Waterloo has a lot more evidence than we do to keep, but again, so you'll see an agenda request coming from for next week, and Chief Duncan will be here, but since we're gonna discuss these things, I wanted to throw that out right now.
Sure.
Thank you.
Great.
Michelle, you would sort of raise a question, like, for myself, I would really like to see us get, and I think the five of us need to talk about what the appropriate debt service levy rate is. But I want to, I prefer to keep that level, whatever rate we ultimately decide on, just to make it a little bit more predictable, especially as we've got this artificial cap from the state of 350 or 347 or what, right? We've got that cap, just to make taxing a bit more predictable, at least from the taxpayer side, right? Again, I think we need to collectively have a conversation of what that rate needs to be. I know in the past that's been as low as almost nothing, maybe even like a couple of years where it was maybe nothing, quite a while ago, and then there was I think a bridge project, bridge initiative, well over a decade ago, but it was considerably higher. So I think we just need to come up with some, invest some time in that financial strategy.
History and the strategy of
Yeah.
it, yeah, I was gonna say.
But as a general concept, getting that level, I do think should be a priority for the group.
My concern is keeping the bleeps or the spikes from happening.
Yeah.
Anything we can do now looking ahead to keep those is very important.
That's kind of what we're trying to do with the tax increases too, is trying to have them as predictable as one could, or keep them as stable at least as they could.
Yeah.
That's just our portion.
Yeah.
We had control over. Yeah. The rest we can't, yeah. Unfortunately, we'll get all the questions and all the comments
Sure.
and the hardships too. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you. All right, do we have any reports or information?
Well, before we moved on,
Yeah.
I had one question too. I'd mentioned to a couple, and I knew a couple of you knew that, a couple of weeks when we had approved the maximum tax levy.
Yep.
And we had went through and approved everything, like I say, as far as projects, and we also did the 10% increases for everyone and included that. And, and my position on that was really because I wanted it as high as possible. It doesn't sound like we'll probably be changing our property tax rate too much, because I think we're leaving everything in as much as we could. But I wondered if we should have a little more discussion on the elected officials' compensation, just because we didn't have a lot of talk about that, and it was a little bit different this year than it had been previous. And I know Amanda and her department have done a lot of work for us to present, I guess, not only just the comp study work, but as far as where we were and where we compared. And I think when we voted the other day, we just proposed at the standard 10% level for all elected officials. And doesn't mean previous years that we had to follow that at all, but because we've always done it where the supervisors have been segregated somewhat and done differently than the other elected officials. And like I said, just because that had been past practice certainly isn't the way we needed to go, but I just wondered how everyone felt. There was a division among the supervisors. We didn't all support unanimously the 10% increase. And I just thought if it warranted any more discussion or further discussion, I guess I would just be curious to hear how everyone feels about the different, you mentioned, I know earlier, Rich, about the double digit.
Yep.
And like I said, we're set, so we know the high was in there, but if we wanted to do anything differently, that we could go lower, we knew, but not higher. So that was just to have some discussion on that, I guess. I know that will be a subject that we'll probably hear from the public as well. So as long as we're doing that. What, have you
I have
Oh,
heard.
all right.
So,
Okay.
again, it's not that I don't believe the 10% isn't warranted. You know, and I look at the averages, I had several comments this past week to me about where it was at or what was going on. Again, we need to maintain our folks and stay within some kind of comparables with other counties as well. I can accept the 10%, I feel more comfortable at 9, just getting it off the double digit. But looking at the numbers, we're not talking huge dollars in between. It was the perception of 10% more than anything to double digit, so. But again, the few dollars, and this year coming in right middle of budget, that's my personal opinion on it. Was the knee-jerk reaction to the 10 or the double digit. However, next year may be a totally different scenario, it may be a whole lot less than that. But I look at what the average has been. When people tell me, well, they're surprised at a 10% increase, and I should say, you should be surprised when the board has taken a 0%. So when I look at the average, we're staying right within the averages of people say, well, what would be a good raise? 3.5, 3.5. Well, this keeps us, and I look back through the years, an average about 3.5. So in that process, I hear you, I understand that, the 10% again, is perception. Dollar-wise, we're talking not near as much, so wherever you wanna go with that.
Well, what are you comfortable with? I guess when you're saying the perception, you understand the fact that, like you said, where it kind of moved us. I think that was what Amanda did. It doesn't really, I'm not even sure we weren't, when I said we're at 29th in the state, I'm not sure we weren't 29th in the state when I started several years ago too, so I know that part hasn't. It was just, I think, like I said, the supervisors, and I know because we are the one office, elected office, that has a shared position, it's like shared, so it's like, yeah, obviously if you put our salaries together and it was one individual doing it, that would be fine, but I said, and I know in all fairness to the others too, our schedules are somewhat a little more flexible than those who are here, every day as well and in full-time positions, but it was just a consideration, I guess, of where we are and where we feel comfortable being. And as a board, I know we can't always agree unanimous, but I'd like to see us, when we're accepting, I guess, a salary increase, that we all have an opinion and thoughts on it, so.
Whether it's 10 or 9, I was looking at this as it was like a one-time correction, that we've already done that process through every other part of the county with wages, to bring them more up to closer to market. And it was catching up these departments a little bit to get them closer to market, and still recognizing that the supervisor, we're still way below the market. I mean, people realize, in Lynn County, they're making 6 figures, and that's not the only place that they're.
Yeah, to me, it was the 90% to market has been my motivation. When we've done the corrective actions that we've taken on salaries, this Chris's point seems to be the last pillar of that. I also, from the year that we went at 0 for all electeds, and then came back and did the increases underneath, we do start to get to some compression issues, because it's not just electeds, but it's their deputies as well. That's a piece that we've got to keep in mind here, so, yeah. At the end of the day, I want sound policy. That sound policy for the board has been at 90, to try to get to 90%. If we can get there at 9%, fine. To Rich's point, the difference between 9 and 10% is pretty minimal. But if I can't imagine that's an issue of us getting to 90 or thereabout, that 1% difference, I'd be fine there. Trying to see if there's on the corner.
She is on the corner.
Okay.
She was kind of listening and trying to.
Just looking out the window, a little bit, but sorry.
You're good.
Can you repeat the question?
If instead of at 10%, we were at 9%. And then also then for recorder and treasurer, we would need to be at 9 point something to align with the auditor,
That
right?
difference, yeah. Sure.
But if we were at roughly 9% there, would that still keep us close in that ballpark of 90% to market?
Yeah, no, I think, again, you're within a percentage, so it's just not a huge amount. We talked about this even with like non-bargaining, that when you're at that point. So, yeah, whether you do 9, 10, I think if you can, like, we don't know what the market's we know some have moved or so that it will likely go up some. I don't think it's gonna be as dramatic as it's been in the past, especially with some of the back the blue, I guess, the outcomes of that. There was a lot of changes in elected officials over the last couple of years, and I think they've leveled out. But even if those level out, our elected officials are still today 15% behind. So trying to get to 90, and ultimately 95, I think is what is the goal that we want to get to over the next year to 2 years. And it might take longer than that. That's what we said with the unions too. That, we recognize we're behind, but that's why we did some higher across the boards, added steps, shifted the scale for those 3 years. And so I think I really feel that the data supports the 10%. I think at 9%, it's just kind of like, well, and that's, I definitely get perception. Understand that. We've been through that with a lot of wages. So, but you're just very close at this point, so it's not a huge shift. But.
And if you're comfortable, I guess I'm thinking too,
Right.
if you're comfortable in the amount and the explanation of how much the difference is versus the perception. 9 versus 10.
I've heard positive feedback from, elected officials, such that you guys are entertaining around those numbers, and that it was supported, so, and their deputies as well. The compression is definitely, for me, it's the equity as well, looking across that other directors or department heads appointed roles that are 95% of the market versus an elected official doing similar type work in a leadership role be 85%.
Yeah, for what it's worth, for numbers, the difference between 9% and 10% between us, for us, is $441 a year. Equating to 2,200, you know, altogether, so I didn't weigh in on the discussion yet, but what I've learned in 2 months of doing this is a hell of a lot more than I ever knew. It just is, and I love every second of it, but for people who think, you know, what do those folks do on that board? There's a ton to it, and from the boards or the commissions, the committees, the strategic planning. Well, now I believe, I would have probably complained a year ago if I saw this, not knowing any better. But knowing, you know, being in it now and seeing what's going on and how we're aggressively working behind the scenes to make things better down the road for, you know, whether it be econ development or improving current systems that are fractured, we're gonna earn it, I can promise you that. So, again, I'm open to any lashings anybody wants to give me publicly too, so. But as Amanda has said, I mean, it's defensible too, so. We rank, what, 29th, or the 5th most populous county in the state, we rank barely in the top third. So,
And that goes in line with those other elected officials that haven't broken through the top 10. I mean, so I understand the feedback and that, I mean, we've been dealing with that, our office, internally and externally. When people see wages, it's always an interest, a point of interest for any kind of for the public to ask about, but I think you have a good plan here to support what was recommended and yes, historically the board has, you know, had a lower amount or lowered theirs, and some of that was from the comp board that even when they started to, you know, the longest time the comp board only made one recommendation for everyone regardless of what the market showed. And you know, then we saw that kind of change, even before Back the Blue, we saw where that tended the sheriff needed a little bit more, but the others could stay, but the board can lower theirs if they wish to, and lower theirs more than the others. But I think, again, the shows that the board is behind as well. And I think we presented two models to look at that, whether you look at it from one large salary split, if it's 3 or 5 individuals compared, you're still behind, so. What were you gonna say?
Just trying to think through what the 9, if we were at 9, what that change is for treasurer and recorder, just for motion purposes.
Oh, well, were we just gonna adjust those, or what, I mean, obviously it's a percentage, those
We
three
don't
positions.
I guess I don't have my laptop with me. Michelle might have it, but it would be.
I think the first question, I thought it was just talking about supervisors, so.
No, it was elected officials, and whether or not to do a distinction, whether or not it was to do the 10, and if if it's a do overall 10, or the supervisor's less was kind of just all of the above, I guess.
So a 9% with the auditor would, at today's dollars, put it at 93%. If you do 10, puts it at 94.
That's
At today's dollars.
well, that would be at,
If nobody got raises.
if nobody else
No
across the
other
state got
number.
raises,
Yeah.
well, then it's not a real number.
Yeah, so then you're there, if
Then you're
they get
bouncing, you're
4,
bouncing your 9.
yeah, you're under that curve I was talking
Yeah.
about that first week.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, and you know, this will come before the board formally as a part of the budget where all of the salaries get read.
We have to read them.
We'll get rid.
Yep, so even if anything's discussed, even, you know, revoted today, it comes back again, just for the formal official budget or hearing, I believe, so. But
I guess what I'm hearing, if I can tie a bow on this, is 9% for electeds with that adjustment for treasurer and recorder, versus the 10.
I don't know, I'm not
Is
sure.
is that collectively what I'm hearing, or?
Does that work for everyone to do a 9 versus 10? I'm just open to the discussion and whether or not we.
So where I'm at right now, looking at the total budget where we came in with the tens, I can live with it,
You could accept 10.
I can accept it.
Okay.
It just, I understand the perception of people out there when they read it in the paper and then when they're asking for clarification. Cause I did get asked, point blank, Linda and I someone came in and asked us point blank. Yes, that's the situation, but when I look at the overall, especially with the board of supervisors, we're, again, the year they took a 0, you divide that out, that's a 5, and you're still behind. So, on the average, we're in the matrix where they say they wanna see us at. So I can live with that, it just, the perception part was hard to understand when I first walked in here.
So if we voted today, you'd be willing to support 10?
I can accept the 10.
Support 10. That's really, I'd love us to be able to do that, if we can't, then just, I need the explanation of why not.
Yeah, I think we, both individually, in our different platforms, just especially explain what the real dollar numbers are. Cause 10% sounds like a lot, but 10% of 43,000 isn't as much, and so, yeah, it's all coming timed at the same time that people are upset about the governor's $100,000 raise, they're upset the $217,000 package that the superintendent as a school is laying off employees, and so it's all kind of being lumped into this thing, but if you tell people the real dollar numbers, then.
And that it was 0 last year too, I mean, the year before. Yes, but there was a 0 there that never got made up. All that helps with the explanation, but it's everybody being comfortable with it, I guess, it's just what I wanted to do, so.
And it was my second meeting, and I don't know about Justin, I don't wanna speak for Justin, but there has been a huge learning curve in how all this gets put together in this process. Again, mine was knee-jerk reaction to that, double digit, I understand, but doing the homework and looking long-term, we're in the ballpark yet on the average.
Comfortable making a motion?
We did already. Oh, you wanted to now?
I do, I mean, to me, that's a signal as well, I think, of, to me, of support and I guess of the positions that we're in and that we all feel and agree. You know, and I mentioned to you before too, you can support the position, but if you voted against it, it actually isn't supporting the position. So then if we all feel it's defensible, then defend it. I prefer it.
I'll make a motion, we leave it at the 10% for all electeds.
I'll second that. For all electeds, and 10 and 5 are 10 and 5 though. Right, because we're at county attorney.
County attorney.
Oh, yes.
Okay, just wanted to make
Yes.
You wanna equalize.
and then equalize for.
And equalize for the, yes.
Yep. Alright, so clarification. Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Alright.
Thank you.
Did you?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Anything else on the budget? Otherwise, any reports or information from the board?
I'll report back from my first meetings with solid waste. I had a bunch of meetings last Wednesday, both individually with John in the morning, catching up on everything, and then we had a work session in the afternoon where we had a presentation. I guess they had commissioned a study on what the financial feasibility and cost comparisons would be between continuing on with the contract renewal or to have most of the services contracted out or bringing those in-house with their own employees. And the results of the study was that at the very least, it was cost neutral, but it also didn't, but that would assume that the next contract, which expires next July, I believe, wouldn't have an increase, but we know we've seen how large contracts have gone here at the county with 20-25% increases, and sometimes even midway through the contract. And also, they recommended that at the very least, if you did stay with it being a private contract, that you would need to bring the scale house services in-house to have more control over how that's operating, to make sure that we're not getting overcharged for different things, and that you would need to have a site supervisor really on there to make sure that everything's being done in compliance, which creates there's a big liability right now, the way it is that, without having someone not financially motivated by the contract to maximize the profit, to be looking over and make sure that we're complying with all the different regulations. And one thing that really jumped out at me, in terms of just kind of the kind of control factor, is that, for example, and I might get the inches and feet incorrect, but every night at the close of operations, you're covering all the new waste with soil, and I believe it's supposed to be like 6 inches. But oftentimes the contractor, because they don't pay for the creation of the cells that we bond for here at the county every year, and so there's no financial motivation to taking the time or even trying to stay close to that 6-inch kind of area. So sometimes they're covering it with 2 feet, 6 feet. And so that's gonna be filling up those cells a lot faster. And that means a lot more bonding in the future and a lot less life. So I think there's a lot more to be diving into, but I'm really glad that we're at least taking a really hard, serious look at the operations. We compared them to the landfills in Lynn County, Dubuque, and the northern Iowa landfill. And just even looking at the tonnage weight, and all of those are run with public employees. We're paying a higher tonnage weight and a higher amount overall for fewer services. They're providing more services at those locations too. And so I think there's a lot to really look at, but I think it's kind of exciting and important that we're taking a deep dive into it all. And I'll keeping everybody updated. I'm gonna get electronic copies of that financial study sent to all of you too.
Well, John had mentioned when he was here, it's gonna require a lot more time even than they've been, taking for meetings and things, so it's like,
Yeah.
thank you for.
No, I'm willing to put that time in, environmental issues are a passion of mine, and looking at it from a resource management standpoint, looking at the holistic needs of maybe having a more unified recycling program throughout the communities. Right now, we've got all this hodgepodge of, Republic has a contract here, Cedar Falls has their own thing, and there's ways of doing it to have more control that would give us a more marketable and profitable recycling product that doesn't have as much contamination in it as we do right now. And so, I think it's kind of an exciting time to be serving on that commission, so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Chris, I've always had the concern that we're taking the waste from other counties as well. It's not just Blackhawk County. And it's gonna be filling us up even quicker.
Yeah, and and I'm gonna be diving deeper into those numbers and those rates. I mean, the impression I have right now is that the one benefit we have is that we do have a lot of land. It's not all, and a lot of land that is permitted to be developed into future cells. And so they're saying, but it has to be balanced out. And so, to me, if we're taking waste from outside communities, it needs to be at, extreme premium. I mean, you can learn that by playing the Sim City for a while.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, so it's, that's definitely one of the places I'm gonna be looking at a lot, is how much of that continues to make sense, but currently there is a profit from doing it. We don't wanna be, it needs to be at a real premium though.
Last Friday, I was able to attend another one of the township meetings. I was down in, I forgot which township it was at. Down south of Hudson there, and again, meeting some wonderful people that are taking care of our townships. And I plan on continuing to attend these township meetings. We did get a complaint from an individual last night about his road, and have reached out to him, and hopefully be talking more with Kathy and Ryan about that as well. Kind of follow up with that, and
making sure our rural areas know that they are being heard.
Thanks for responding too. Once you did, I didn't see a need for any of the rest of, I mean, not that you can't follow up, but yeah.
That's the stuff people don't know at 9:30 PM.
I know, yeah, the stuff that you sent through,
Just for
that's
the
what I
record.
said, Ryan was on it, and Ryan, usually he or Kathy responds to the whole board too, and tells Dan as well as the person that reached out to us with the response, so we know how they've responded to, just in the future.
I caught up on it at 3 AM, so
Yeah,
that's fun.
that's because you're up already.
Yeah. Alright, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.